This episode of the podcast is brought to you by New Bloom Labs.
Be honest, you're probably frustrated with your testing lab, right? Don't worry, most cannabis producers are. Whether it's the long wait for your certificates of analysis, or inconsistent reports, or reports that are just hard to understand in general. Most analytic labs do more to frustrate their customers than serve them. But it doesn't have to be that way. Instead, call New Bloom Labs. New Bloom Labs understands the cannabis industry and what's important to growers, processors, and manufacturers. New Bloom Labs offers the fastest turnaround time in the industry, delivering most test results in just one business day. Waiting for your testing lab results is not cool. Instead, for superior science and rapid results, call New Bloom Labs at 844-TEST-CBD or visit their website at newbloomlabs.com. Superior science, rapid results, New Bloom Labs.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Branding Isolate.
Are you thinking about starting a cannabis business? Well, if so, it's time to think about how to brand it. With literally hundreds, if not thousands, of providers currently popping up across North America, the need to create a distinct brand identity is more important than ever. That's why I always trust the team at Branding Isolate. The branding agency is armed with almost 2 decades of experience in design, branding, and website development. They make sure that your CBD or wellness brand sells, connects, and succeeds through their wide variety of services, which include logo design, brand strategy, package design, product photography, website design, and website development. Call them at 832-379-8978 or go to their website at brandingisolate.com. Branding Isolate, the branding agency that handcrafts brands that sell, connect, and succeed. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connects podcast. My guest today is Dr. Rick Ferris, functional medicine and wellness. Dr. Rick Ferris, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Kevin.
Thanks so much for coming on today and making time for me. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for the invite. I'm looking forward to it. CBD is a huge passion of mine. Just kind of give you a sense of how I got intimately involved with CBD and ultimately certified in it through International Center for Cannabinoid Therapy. For anybody that's interested, it's a great program, 12 modules. Took me a while. But my introduction to CBD, I knew it had always been around, but probably about 5 years ago, I had read that it's effective for glaucoma, intraocular pressure. And I had had RK done many years ago, and it left, in my right eye, it left significantly high pressure. And so sure enough, I ordered some in, had no clue what I was doing, what I was even getting. And within 2 weeks, or certainly my next eye appointment, the pressure normalized, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
My next
introduction.
I know.
I might just pause you periodically as we talk
yeah.
and dive into things. So that's interesting that you say specifically CBD, the minor cannabinoid found in cannabis, is what helps treat glaucoma. Because if you think about kind of the stereotype in like the 90s stoner, you know, you had the person who smoked, and then if they were caught by the cops or whatever, hey, it's for my glaucoma. You know, and people translate that smoking with THC, obviously, because it has that psychoactive effect. But is what you're saying that really the cannabinoid that gets to the center of kind of helping treat glaucoma is CBD?
Or is CBD, certainly in this case.
Okay.
For me. And then my next opportunity to use it was in a cancer patient. A friend of mine's husband was diagnosed with cancer pretty far along. And I said, well, okay, did a little bit of research, and it turns out, and I could go on forever about CBD and cancer, but turns out that it's got a huge indication. And so I started to use it in this guy, but I quickly realized I had no clue again. High doses, very expensive. And while I was able to put him in remission for a little while, that's when I said to myself, Rick, if you're going to get into this, then you really have to become an expert and intimate. And that's where I found the certification program, and sort of the rest is history after that.
So, you know,
Go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, and I want to, because we're going to talk a lot about the clinical side of the cannabinoids, specifically CBD in this episode. So I do want to make it clear, of course, that none of these are official medical claims, right? This is just stuff that obviously you've experienced with your patients, and so we're just kind of sharing that information and relaying it. Until we have that FDA guidance in terms of what we can say, it's kind of all up in the air.
No, that's a great point, Kevin. This is strictly my experience. I can make claims clinically based on my experience with my patients. Could I back it up with literature? Of course I could. There's a bunch of evidence-based stuff out there. But as you said, until the FDA actually turns around and gives its blessing, whenever, if ever, it's strictly experiential.
Right.
And that's very important point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And no worry. Yeah, I just want to throw that out there. But then also I want to follow up. So from what I'm hearing, kind of initially your journey into CBD on the clinical perspective of it was you knew that it had some type of efficacy and value because you were kind of using it for the different ailments that you mentioned. Of course, yourself personally with glaucoma, this patient that had cancer. So you said, okay, there's something there. And then you thought, now, all right, I really need to get serious about this and start learning, I guess, the science behind it, right?
Exactly. And the certification program literally took me through growing it to extraction, and then of course all of the clinical indications, which continue to grow, frankly, on a daily basis. I find myself recommending CBD in situations where one would not even consider it, and getting some amazing results. So I'm using it a lot with autoimmunity, and I'm going to go off track here a little bit, but again, CBD plays a tremendous role in autoimmunity.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it specifically. So yeah.
So there are over 100 autoimmune diseases, and new ones pop up all the time. The ones that people think about are rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, Hashimoto's, Sjögren's. Again, the list is absolutely huge, and I can elaborate on it a little bit now or a little bit later. But what I found in doing a lot of research, because I quickly became what I consider a COVID expert, and there was some recent literature that just came out that talked about tissue damage associated with COVID and the term long haulers. Well, when I first saw tissue damage, I said, wow, that sounds like an autoimmune response. Well, lo and behold, 2 papers that just came out recently said, we think this is autoimmune, and also addresses the long haul, symptomatic kind of patients that goes on for months. Well, the beauty about CBD, all right, I'm going to get a little technical here, but you've got your thymus gland, which creates T cells, which pretty much controls your immune system. So one of the T cells, it's called Th17, actually plays a significant role in autoimmunity. When it's elevated, we get all sorts of incredible inflammation, cytokine storm, IL-6, 1, IL-17. Well, guess what downregulates Th17? CBD. Gotta love it, okay? So that's right at the top of my list. for treating CBD,
for
treating autoimmunity naturally.
What about some of the other kind of ailments that, you always hear when people are introducing CBD as a therapeutic alternative? So like, say anxiety, or even, pain management,
Oh yeah,
depression,
yeah. The list goes on. Okay. I use CBD a lot for anxiety and depression. Um, and if there's any clinicians that are going to hear this or see it or however you handle it, my background is unique in that I have a PharmD, which is basically a PhD in clinical pharmacy. So that gives me the comfort level to do what I've started to do. And that is people will come to me on myriad of drugs, these huge med profiles, psychotropics, blood pressure meds. I mean, the list goes on. And they want to get off of these meds. Well, I have found that I can use CBD to get people off the psychotrope. It takes a while. It's a titration game. Push the CBD up, go down in the drug dose or frequency. So I just got a guy off. He's on 4 BP meds. I just got him off of 2 of them because CBD does what? It helps to lower blood pressure. Another one of its mechanisms. So I get him on CBD, and I get him to start getting off the. I get him to start getting off the BP meds. We start with one, and we did one. We went up with the CBD. We dropped another, and he's doing fine on 2. Psychotropics take a little bit longer, but the point is, you can use CBD to help people get off medications. Pain meds. I love CBD. Now, there's a lot of patients out there that, and believe me, I get a ton of them with pain issues that are on narcotics, okay? And they'd like to get off the narcotics or at least minimize their dose. The beauty about CBD that it works synergistically with narcotics because it works on different receptor sites. So I've been able to get patients combine the two, get wonderful pain relief, and begin to start taper off their narcotics, which of course is the push today.
Right.
So and as far as depression and anxiety, we know how it works. Works through Cb1, and which is our
Cb1 receptor, which is in our endocannabinoid system, right?
There you go. Yep. Cb1, Cb2.
I've heard that they said that they've even found, or they're finding evidence of a Cb3 receptor. Is that
GRP 55?
Wow. See, yeah.
And that's considered the CBD3, CB3.
So
there's others, TRPV, PPAR. I mean, I love this stuff. Okay.
So I have a specific question regarding CBD, right? And dosing, or not dosing, but I guess the frequency in which you take it, because I've kind of heard mixed reviews. I've heard some people that take it, a really good product, and like, I feel it instantly, I feel great, which I'm sure you do, but I've heard also that you want to take it over time so that it really kind of builds up in your system. Is that true?
Yeah, it's in the pharmacy world, it's called pharmacokinetics. And the term we use is steady state. Okay, so CBD has a half-life of a couple of days. All right, even though people get responses very quickly, in some cases it takes a little longer. It takes longer because you want to build up until you reach steady state. Okay, once you reach steady state, if you keep taking the same dose and it's working for you, outstanding. You just keep doing it. That's steady state. So whether you're doing that daily, and that's usually how I start people out. I tell them start out at night, okay, because there is a sedative component. Not for everybody. That's a different issue. Have them start out at night, and I use start low and go slow approach, simply because it ain't cheap stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who you're getting it from. All right. Plus, I have people that respond beautifully to 7 milligrams for any number of pathologies, pain, anxiety. Okay. So I usually start them out at around 7 milligrams. And every couple of days, I suggest that they add another 7 milligrams. Okay. And it's unusual for anybody that's going to need any more than 25 to 30 milligrams. Now, I've used 800 milligrams to shut down a psychotic break. 25 milligrams for Parkinson's, 200 milligrams for cancer. The dosing's all over the place. However, I still always get back to, unless I know exactly what I'm treating, okay, and then I'll start somebody out. Parkinson's, I'll start them out at 25, 30 milligrams. It's great for Parkinson's, by the way.
Wow.
It works through, Parkinson's is caused by deficiencies in dopamine. Now, it turns out that CBD works through that whole dopamine pathway. Got a lot. All right. So
it's a miracle. It's a miracle cannabinoid, and it actually kind of leads me to my next question, Rick, which is, so like, you're obviously huge and focused on CBD, right? And
yeah.
but as we know, there's hundreds of different other minor cannabinoids that we're still learning about, right? I mean, we're still kind of scratching the surface of this. So my question is, what other research have you found, regarding other cannabinoids, like say CBG, CBN, CBC,
great question. I don't spend a lot of time with the isolates. I'm aware of them, certainly. They're very expensive, difficult to extract. What I have found, for instance, CBG, okay, that's the biggie these days. All right.
Well, and they say it's the mother of all cannabinoids, because without CBG, you wouldn't have a byproduct of CBD or THC. It kind of originates from CBG.
Well, interesting from a biochemical perspective, although there's a lot of products out there that have no CBG, or it's so minimal.
Right. Well, due to the lack of FDA regulation, there's a wild, wild west out there, man. They're packaging up products that have little to no,
Oh.
No. Oh.
Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to skip out. What I was just saying is, yeah, no, you're right in that, and it's part of it's due to the lack of FDA oversight. I mean, the fact that it's the Wild West right now, and there's products that have little to no cannabinoids of what their labeling says, which is sad.
Well, it's very sad, but there's a company out there that is promoting CBG as a solo isolate, and the cost, frankly, is prohibitive. Now, the question you have to ask, though, is, when you got the CBN and you got the CBN and the A and the C and everything else, and they all have specific clinical indications, but they all overlap. So at the end of the day, the question you have to ask yourself is there that much of an advantage using these isolates versus just using straight CBD?
So
I struggle with that.
You answered my next question. So I wasn't inferring, or that it's that those would be isolates. And my next question was going to be your thoughts on full spectrum, which is exactly what you're saying, is that it's better to kind of have a mixture of these, right, as opposed to isolating one cannabinoid, because you're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater at that point. Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
think so, because I really struggle clinically, even though I've read about all of these isolates, but when you look at them, they all overlap, and they certainly overlap with CBD. So are you ready to spend the money? The one company is pushing it as the new savior for anxiety and depression. Okay, CBG. So, but I have wonderful results just using straight CBD.
Right.
And until somebody shows me that there's going to be a dramatic difference, i.e. with the additional cost, that it's going to make that much difference. So when you talk about full spectrum, we're talking about the lemonines, we're talking about all of that stuff.
The terpenes, the
The
flavonoids,
terpenes, and the flavonoids, and they all come together to work synergistically to give you the kinds of results that we start to see.
Mm-hmm.
The one product that I encourage, okay, well, I'm not going to name it, but the one product that I encourage is full spectrum. Okay, and and it's got the nano, and part of it, some of it's water soluble, I mean, all that wonderful stuff that unfortunately the whole world claims, which is why the industry is so incredibly saturated. And Kevin, as you said, anybody getting into CBD seriously from a sales side, if you will, the first thing they should be looking at, even as an individual, is a certificate of analysis. All right. Then the next question you ask is, do I believe the COA?
What are indicators of people to find like a bad COA or maybe a fake COA or a repurposed COA? Like, is there any indicators that people can look out for?
No. The one company, and I don't know how many companies would even consider doing this because there's an expense, but the one company that I'm fond of actually sends their product out for analysis, and it's totally open to the public. And
very transparent. Yeah.
Very incredibly transparent. Okay. Or if you have the money, and I've known individuals that have done this, they bought a product from a company and they've actually sent it out for analysis themselves and were disappointed with the results. Okay. And believe me, if you don't think they didn't make that public, hello.
Right.
So, but I think for the most part, most of these companies are reasonably reputable.
Right.
And what I tell my patients is it's all about results. Okay. So when patients come to me and they send me labs, okay, they'll say, well, look, my labs, this is off and this is off, but how do you feel? Well, I feel okay. Well, then we're just going to ignore these labs because they're totally irrelevant. So even at the end of the day, if you think you got a bogus COA and you start taking CBD and you go, man, I'm sleeping, my anxiety is gone, the assumption you can make is that it's a legitimate product. So I always fall back on, how do you feel? Forget about all the other stuff.
I mean, that's good. I mean, I would say, just to kind of play devil's advocate, if you're messing with things like, say, a CBD vape cartridge, right? And you do feel a little better, but there's mycotoxins or vitamin E acetate that you don't really, that at that case, you might want to make sure that everything's tested and whatnot, because we saw that was a huge thing. But I see your point, like, because we don't want detractors at the end of the day, right? We don't want people to take a product that's mislabeled or falsely claimed, and then they take it and nothing happens, or subconsciously they think it's not going to work and it does, and then they don't come back, right? And that's the last thing we want, because we know the efficacy is there.
Especially with vaping. Okay, I don't like anything going into the lungs.
Right.
Okay. However, I've had 3 successes with vaping. I found it to be very effective with panic attacks. Shuts it right down. Okay, very effective for seizures.
Is that why? Is it because it's the most instant, immediate effect because it's hitting your bloodstream as opposed to like your liver trying to digest and
instantaneously?
Yeah.
We all know, again, without it going into the kinetics of CBD, you take CBD orally and what you get is, 14, 15% bioavailability, right? And that's where the nano comes in the water solubility. Okay, but when you vape something, it's pretty instantaneous. I mean, for those folks, that smoke marijuana, okay, THC. I'm not going to go into my history, but the the effect.
Go into it. Why not?
The effect is instantaneous. I come from that generation where we were all playing with it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And the response when you smoke it is instantaneous.
Right.
You just know. Okay. And you're going to get the same effect with CBD. And when somebody tells me that they're in the middle of a panic attack and they take a hit of it, okay, and it just shuts it right down, what's it doing? It's just working on your central nervous system and all those neurotransmitters that play a role in panic attacks, okay, norepinephrine and that kind of stuff. So, and then seizures, seizures all about your nervous system and thresholds and everything else. And then CBD just shuts it right down. Gotta love it.
So would you say, so that's an interesting topic, right? We're talking about right now. So like you're giving like real world examples of like how different formulations could help in different situations. So you mentioned panic attacks for smoking, instantaneous. Were you mentioning seizures as well as being instantaneous?
Seizures, instantaneous.
Yeah. So then my next question would be like, you've got topicals, you've got balms, sublinguals. So like for balms and things that you'd rub on your skin, would you say that's more for like athletic recovery or older people that have, joints that are aching and things like that?
Well, if you've got a good product, again, with good bioavailability, it's manufactured and processed in such a way that it penetrates the skin well, and there's a lot of bases that do this. One of my many lives was in compounding pharmacy. I'm actually an expert in it. So I've played around in labs and I've made compounds, and we use stuff like DMSO and these various bases that encourage penetration. And I've seen some of these companies that promote topicals where they've actually done the research. And I mean, if you really want to take a look, okay, and this is part of the research they've done, so they'll put on an application, okay, and then they'll actually measure serum levels, blood levels. Well, wow, you can't get much more explicit than that, right? Mm-hmm. You put it on, you get blood levels. Holy smokes. Now, most of the time, you don't particularly care about blood levels if you're using it topically. You're looking for penetration to the point where you're going to get results, usually pain and inflammation. All right. And it works if you've got a good product. Mm-hmm. So now here's a perfect example. Okay. I've got a patient right now who's on 5 psychotropics, 5 antidepressants at one time. Okay. That's insane, and I'm not going to go into that. But I can't put her on CBD, and this is a segue into probably one of the most important things that we can talk about tonight. Okay. I can't put her on oral CBD because of the drug interactions, and they are huge. So let's talk about that a little bit, okay? There's 3 enzymes through the liver, CYP3B4, 2D6, that literally, and the way I explain it to people, and this is 60-70% of the drugs out there, when you give CBD with a drug, the assumption you have to make is it's going to increase serum levels, blood levels. Along with that goes side effects. Now, I get people off of BP meds because I'm using the side effect of increasing the effectiveness of the BP meds so I can start backing off. Now, with the psychotropics, that's a different story. The first drug interaction I ran into, and I did it up in my website as a blog, was one of my patients, unbeknownst to me, I was treating her for toxicity and a bunch of stuff. Unbeknownst to me, I get her started on CBD. A few days later, she calls me and she goes, "My hands are soaking wet." And I said, "Well, I am detoxing you, and that's a potential side effect." A few days later, she calls me and she goes, "It's like I woke up and took a shower in my bed." And I said, "Well, that's not detoxing." Okay. So, oh, by the way, my shrink put me on Prozac. Well, duh. Okay. And she didn't tell me. So she ended up doing a wonderful.
So you're saying that because she didn't tell you about getting on Prozac and you put her on CBD, that's the interaction that you found that.
Yep. And 60% of the drugs out there are going to interact that way. And if you're not aware of that, this is why I struggle with the vape shops and everything else. Okay. Somebody's on a blood thinner. Okay. They go in, they get on CBD, and then they're wondering why they're bruising all over the place. Well, it's because it's increased the effectiveness. And it'll do that for 60, 70% of the drugs out there. And if you're not aware of that, all of a sudden you feel like crap. Okay. You're getting all these weird side effects and everything else that you haven't had. Well, you just assume it's the CBD. It's not the CBD. It's the CBD interacting with all of these drugs. There's a flip side to it. There are some drugs that actually work against CBD, making it less effective. Not many, but there's a few, like anticonvulsants. So nobody leaves my office with CBD unless I've gone over their med profile with them.
That is really fascinating. And I think it's important to reiterate it again. So you're saying that CBD increases the effectiveness by 60 to 70% of drugs currently in your body if you take it at the same time.
Well, no, 60 to 70% of the drugs out there. Now, how but it does increase. It increases the effectiveness.
The effectiveness.
Along with that goes side effects.
Right. Wow. So yeah, you really got to make sure that your system is clean and you're being responsible with how you're using it for therapeutic reasons, of course, before taking it.
But
That's
you've got to know the first question you ask yourself before you go out and you get yourself on CBD is, what meds am I on? And is there a drug interaction? You can Google it. Okay, and you'll get some great advice and information. Most of the time they'll say don't. Okay, that's where people like me come in and go, you can use it, but this is what I want you to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
We're actually going to start using this to get you off of this particular drug because I think I can replace it with CBD and other supplements. That's one of the things I do a lot of.
Wow.
Okay. Hate drugs. It's ironic. I have the PhD in clinical pharmacy and I hate drugs, which is why I went out and got a doctorate in naturopathy and certified in functional medicine to get people off drugs. For every drug out there, it can usually be replaced with a natural substance.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, because you said that quite a bit about get off drugs, and I'm thinking obviously we're in an opioid crisis, right? There's no doubt about that. There's people that are addicted to these opioid and these pain management pills, but I think also in some cases, they help. But you're saying everything can be replaced with a plant-based kind of more natural remedy.
For the most part, okay. I always tell my patients that come to me, I said, there's certain things I won't play with. I won't play with drugs that are antiarrhythmics. Okay. I don't need you having arrhythmia while you're taking CBD. All right. And a cardiovascular accident. So there's certain areas I stay away from unless I know what's causing it. But for the most part, everything's fair game.
What are your thoughts on THC, the psychoactive cannabinoid found in the cannabis plant?
Originally, THC, and that's what started the whole endocannabinoid thing. Okay, THC. I always think of THC as having two outstanding clinical outcomes. One is in seizures. That's where it all started, right? And the other one is chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. Seems to have a tremendous effect there, okay? Now you've got, and of course, here again, Kevin, again, we can talk about this forever. Everybody's now breeding and doing genetic manipulation. So there's a certain portion of THC and there's a certain portion of CBD. We know, in fact,
hemp and industrial hemp, 0.3 or less, right? Is what you're referring to?
Yeah, 0.3. Yeah. But we know for a fact that depending on the amount of CBD, it actually will work. Again, I'm going to get more technical here. CBD does not work on Cb1 and Cb2. Okay, it works through other neurotransmitters, anandamide, okay, and 2-AG. THC works directly on Cb1 and Cb2. And that's where you get a lot of the psychotomimetic effects.
Okay, so you're going to have to explain that in layman's terms because I think I follow it, but I want to make sure that we really understand. So I get what you say, that THC directly hits the Cb1, Cb2 receptors right there, right? And that's kind of how biologically our endocannabinoid system is married to the cannabis plant because of their cannabinoids. But you're saying with CBD, it's not direct, but it somehow gets there through other avenues? Or
the other avenues are two neurotransmitters.
Got you.
And one is called anandamide, okay, which goes off and hits all these other receptor sites, okay, that THC does not, okay. And the other one is called 2-AG, which has works more on the Cb1, Cb2, primarily Cb2 receptors in the gut and viscera, whereas anandamide works primarily on stimulating Cb1 and all of the nervous system stuff that goes with it. So it's pretty neat the way that works. So it's indirect.
Right.
I think is the best way of saying that. But again, it goes after receptor sites. The THC does not. TRPV, PPR, PPARs. I mean, there's a whole buttload of them.
Wow.
So, and each one has different clinical indications. TRPV actually is a wonderful pain receptor. THC doesn't go there. So there's where you get in the synergy, okay, between the opioid receptors, mu and kappa, versus, so you throw in CBD, it goes after another pain receptor, you're getting this wonderful synergy.
Wow. So I mean, like you stepping into this game, what you said, like 5 years ago, and really starting to get serious about it. Are you super excited about how fast and how far we've come, and kind of how much public support there is for the plant at this point in time?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's incredibly exciting. And my brother, without going into his background, he's a PhD in neuropsych. He's just published a paper on CBD. He does live imaging in animals. He has his own MRI, and they were dumping CBD in there and looking what it does to the brain. Okay, pretty cool. So there's a paper coming out. I can't wait to read it. So Kevin, you're dead on. Okay, the research that's being done on this is just absolutely amazing. Okay, what I love and what the drug companies don't love is they can't do a darn thing about it because they can't patent it, ergo they can't make any money off of it.
Right. But we have seen that they have filed some patents regarding synthetic, I think synthetic CBD.
Synthetic, and I always forget the name of it. It's for seizures, refractory seizures. But yeah, the synthetics are synthetics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it just ain't the same stuff.
Right. Exactly. Well, hey, Rick, I wanted to ask you, so like in a perfect world, you have like, a magic wand and it's like, boom, tomorrow, the whole future of medicine could be here. What does that world look like?
Well, to me, the way medicine's practiced today, allopathic medicine, is an absolute disaster. Okay. It accomplishes nothing. All they do is focus on symptoms. And so you got a symptom, you get what? You get a drug. Symptom, drug, symptom, drug. If there's a doctor that's going to look at this, he's going to hate me because I tell people you don't have to go to med school anymore. Okay. You got a symptom, the drug company's got a drug for it. Symptom, drug, symptom, drug. That has to change, and it's changing. Okay. Which is why you're seeing so many traditional physicians actually getting certified in naturopathy or functional medicine, because they get it. They're realizing that the way medicine's practiced today is an absolute disaster. And don't get me going on cancer. Mm-hmm. So the trend towards naturopathy and functional medicine is really taken hold. And
so what is that? But what is that? So specifically though, so what does that world look like? Like we walk into a pharmacy and we tell them, I need, this strain of heavy CBD or CBG, but I want it full spectrum, or I want, say, psilocybin to manage my depression. Like, do you see that as kind of all being alternative plant medicine? Or
clearly,
yeah,
clearly, which is why the whole supplement industry. Okay. Now I don't just use CBD. Okay. When I'm treating cancer, CBD is right at the top, but I've got a dozen other interventions that evidence-based with no side effects. So yeah, you're going to be able to walk into a pharmacy. It'd be nice if you had somebody like me there to say, somebody walks in, which is what happens now. Somebody walks in and they said, okay, I've got joint pain. I've got some inflammation. I've got some skin issues. I'm depressed. I've got gut issues. I mean, I've got, colitis. Okay. Well, we know that CBD is just a phenomenal anti-inflammatory, as well as addressing autoimmunity. It all comes together. So, you've got people like me, and people are going to learn this themselves, Kevin. That's what you're talking about, okay? You'll be able to walk into any place, okay, once you're educated, and go, I think I want this isolate because I've got this particular issue. And I read that CBG is more effective than CBD by itself to address this particular clinical issue. Okay, so to me, that's the future. That's the future. If you don't take hold of your own wellness, and naturopathy and functional medicine encourage you to do that, okay, you become a victim.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And see it all the time.
Yeah. And you would think that, when you think about the future and that long-term outlook, it's almost like that's really where it needs to be. Like we should live in a healthcare system where I go, hey, I have this particular element, this particular issue, and I need something for that. Not them prescribing something to blanket and kind of just manage, everything and all of the above,
symptom,
yeah.
And that's the other thing. This is my standard chat, if you will, with my patients. Allopathic medicine, traditional medicine, never ask the question why. They don't have to. Symptom, drug. But that's why these people never get better. Okay. Functional medicine and naturopathy, the first question you ask yourself, and that's the academic challenge, is why do you have the problem? Why do you have psoriasis? Why do you have eczema? Is it, is it mold toxicity? Is it heavy metals? Your gut's a mess. Don't fix the gut and your microbiome. You're never going to feel good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's totally ignored by allopathic clinicians. You got inflammatory bowel. I'm going to give you one of the half dozen drugs out there, which are going to ultimately can give you cancer, what it did to one of my patients. You see it advertised on TV all the time.
Yeah, the laundry list of all the side effects are so funny. One night, my wife and I we were having wine, and I think that we started laughing because she said, "Did they just say?" And it was yearning for what did it say? Something about yearning for urination, or I don't know.
Oh well, the ones that get me are you may want to kill yourself.
It's like, what?
However, ask your doctor to put you on this.
Yeah, but don't worry, because if you feel that way, we've got another pill for you that
right,
will
exactly. Let your doctor know, and we'll just add another pill.
Yeah.
So but yeah, no, that's a great segue into what is medicine going to look like in 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
I think very different. And I think one of the driving forces, when you have things like, and you and I both know that the whole endocannabinoid system has only come to the forefront, in the last 15 years? I mean, it's just amazing. And when we have this inherent system that controls so much of what goes on in our body, and we can manipulate it with something like CBD, wow. Okay. And it's just absolutely incredible. And again, the list goes on and on and on as to what you can use this stuff for, because there are Cb1, Cb2, Cb3 receptors just about in every portion of our body. Central nervous system, Cb1, visceral, gut, Cb2, controls everything.
Yep. It's well said, Dr. Rick. I really appreciate it, man. Hey, I want to give you a chance before we wrap up to just, let people know your website, if you're on social media, where they can find you, maybe even email you if they have some questions.
Sure. My website is, you can get all the information off of that, is askrick, askrick.org. And all my stuff's on there. You can read, my blogs, some of the testimonials, which are heartwarming. And but yeah, I encourage people. I have patients all over the country, so I encourage people to reach out, because I just love to educate. Okay, I maintain my pharmacy license. That pays the bills, because I pretty much give functional medicine away. Because it is such a passion. And but yeah, people, I get tons of questions all the time, emails, texts, and I don't discourage it. My patients don't abuse it. They all have my cell phone. Some do, but but in the meantime, yeah, this has been great, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Of course. No, I've enjoyed it also, man. I learned a lot, and the way you kind of put things is in layman's terms. It's really, really helpful, just to the average listener. So I know that they got a lot out of it as well. So continue to educate, man, and be a proponent of CBD and the other minor cannabinoids, because they're a miracle. They really are, the things that they can do.
One last note. We have part of our endogenous endocannabinoid system. We have something natural called PEA. I learned this in my certification program. Has not come quite to the forefront yet, but it's an endogenous endocannabinoid, and I use the two together like you can't even imagine.
Wow.
Just as a last little, if anybody has any questions about it, I'd be glad to share it. But of course, the focus is on CBD. So there you go. So yes, anybody that wants to reach out, feel free.
Yeah, if you have more information or a research paper or article on that, send it to me. We'll push it out on social media after this episode. So
yeah,
or a blog, one of your blogs.
Yeah, I'm hoping to turn that into a business opportunity because it's amazing. But in the meantime, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Um, I'll look forward to anybody that has an interest in chatting more.
Sounds good, Dr. Rick. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. Bye.